Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Evan Freiberger, and today's forecast, we're going to be talking about the floods in the west, a potential for some severe weather and tornadoes in the southern plains, and talking about the current snowfall amounts in the northeast. And just real quick before we get into it, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy this forecast. Let's get into it. Okay, starting off with the conditions currently across the United States, you can see that there is some heavy rain ongoing in the west. Spotty rain showers down here in the southern plains, and we still have this northeaster happening up in the northeast. The rest of America is pretty calm right now, but if you live in the southeast or up into the Ohio Valley, it's pretty windy. All right, now we're looking at the temperatures across the United States, and as you can see, most of the country is pretty cold right now, pretty below average, except for if you live in the northern parts. You know, it is pretty common that you get these quick cold blasts in March, but really not so much the case in the southeast and the southern plains. So that being said, let's move this model forward, and as you can see, there's a pretty big warm up on the way up here in the southern plains, and that's eventually going to spread off to the east. Continuing to move this forward, you can see that really pushes up there with 60s up into 70s all the way up to Nebraska, and the southeast is starting to warm up as that cold barely holds on into the northeast. Moving this forward a little bit more, you see it cools down during the night, but one thing becomes apparent on the 16th. You see this little line here of warm and cold air? That's potentially a setup for severe weather. Moving this all the way through, you can see as it warms up in front of there, there's definitely a good chance here for severe weather and possibly a couple tornadoes. We're going to go over that later today, but definitely warms back up into the 70s and 80s there over there in central Texas, and then that kind of spreads off to the east and all the way up into the north. You can see that everything is going to kind of warm up here in comparison to what it was. Now we're going to look at the estimated types of precipitation across the United States, and as you can see, that heavy snow is still ongoing up in the northeast, and we still have this atmospheric river pushing tons of rain into the west. Pretty much clear across the rest of the United States in terms of precipitation. Moving this forward, around the 15th at 3 p.m., you can see that a low pressure system moves off the east coast there, and then that energy from the west starts to track across the United States. This is what eventually will cause that severe weather. Moving this forward, you can see that cooler air from the west starts to collide with the warmer and moist air from the Gulf of Mexico. But if you look at the north here, you can definitely see there's a setup here for a lot of snow all the way up into Minnesota, Iowa. As I move this forward, you can see a decent quick shot of some heavy snowfall there for Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. How much more rain are we expecting today in California? Is it all over, or is there still more to come? Well, unfortunately, there's still a lot more to come. So the flooding risk is definitely going to pick up over into the overnight hours and into the morning hours on the 15th, and then it starts to take a break as we progress through the 15th. And after that, it looks like it takes a break as that moisture spreads off to the east. All right, now we're going to look at the northeast and see if there's any more snowfall in the forecast. So moving the model forward, you can see that there is some extra snow still to fall here across the northeast. So basically, just look at the ground, measure it, and then add this snowfall to it, and that's how much more snow you're going to see accumulated on the ground. Zooming in, pulling out the measurement tool here, we can see that there's about 1 to 6 or 7 inches still left here to fall in New York. And then going into Connecticut, about 1 to 6 inches still left to fall. Up into Boston and Massachusetts area, you got 1 to 8 inches still left to fall. And then in the New Hampshire and Vermont area, you can see that there's about 4 to 5 inches still to fall in the lower elevations. And as you get to the higher elevations, still about 8 to 12 inches left to still fall there in Vermont and New Hampshire. And then going into Maine, you can see that there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12 inches still to fall. And then as you get closer to the coast, maybe even another big spot of 11 inches there. Last but not least, we're going to be looking at the available moisture for this upcoming severe weather event. And as you can see, there's plenty there in the Gulf of Mexico. Moving this model forward, you can see that by the 16th, we start to see a surge in moisture into eastern central Texas and then up into Oklahoma. And that's going to be enough moisture to cause some convection and all modes of severe weather. Now we're going to look at the upper and lower level winds to see if there's going to be enough spin in the atmosphere to support tornadoes. Moving this forward, going into the 16th, you can see that there is a little bit of upper level shear there. It's not maximized, but as you move the model forward, you can see that at around 6 p.m., there is enough shear all around near Dallas, just to the north of Houston and Oklahoma City, and eastern Oklahoma to cause severe weather and potentially some tornadoes there. Going into the lower levels, you can see that by the time we get to the 16th, that lower level shear definitely picks up here in the morning hours of the 16th, and then continues to weaken all the way through into 2 p.m. there, and then moving this all the way through. There's still some lower level shear present at 7 p.m. So I do think this lower level shear can cause enough spin for tornadoes. And now moving over to the simulated radar, let's see what these storms are going to kind of look like as we get close to this event. And then right around 10, 11, 12, 3 p.m. we start to see some storms fire here just to the north of Houston, and you start to see a dry line form with storms on it. Then moving this all the way through, you can see we might have a little front here with some prefrontal cells just to the north of Houston entering into Louisiana and the Texas border there. We're definitely gonna have to watch that for isolated supercells. If they can sustain themselves for long enough, we could potentially see some bigger tornadoes. So we're gonna have to watch to see how these models progress. And all this is really gonna start to ramp up around 7 p.m. on the 16th of March. That being said, these models can change and the timing will change, and I will be live tomorrow to cover the more details that we get on the storm. With this severe weather event, we do have a slight risk already for day 3, and this again is for the 16th. And San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Dallas, Tyler, Shreveport, parts of Arkansas, and parts of Oklahoma are in this slight risk. And then you have a marginal risk surrounding that, with Little Rock in there, Fayetteville, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, most of eastern Texas in there, most of Louisiana there, just including near Baton Rouge, and then also Little Rock there in Arkansas. Keep in mind the borders of these risks will change and potentially could downgrade or upgrade as we get closer, but as of right now, it's a 2 out of 5 severe weather event. Last but not least, I want to touch on the flood risk over here in the west. It is pretty intense, and everybody out here is going to have to keep an eye on the levels of the rivers, especially if you live in a low-lying area here in the pink or the red. So let's go over that really quick. The pinks are high risk or maxed out flood risk for this area. So you have Santa Maria, Santa Barbara, Estacadero, and then over here you have Porterville, Parlier, Clovis. Around that, you have a moderate risk Irving, Los Angeles, Santa Clarita, Soledad, San Jose, San Francisco, Redding, Chico, Fresno, Merced there. And then around that, you have a slight risk, and around that slight risk, you have a marginal risk of flooding that actually goes into Oregon and Nevada. All right, that's it for me. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day. See you later.